Okay, so for my refutation, I'll be going against the claims of Yadira Jimenez of how increasing gun control regulations will fail to decrease overall gun violence. Her secondary claims that she used to support her main claim is how gun violence results from an array of different variables, how sociopaths will find a gun regardless of laws, and how background check will fail due to the lack of access to private information. So she starts off her debate discussing how gun violence results from many different variables. Jimenez discusses how there are many different motives for shootings, with examples such as mental health issues and concentrated areas of poverty. However, looking over her source for this information again, it was found that she left out some information. In the source written by Stan Paul, it was also stated that the problem of gun violence in this country is primarily a suicide problem, less so a homicide problem. Paul states that the killings from guns are mostly of suicide rather than homicide. This weakens the claim as a person does not really need a gun to commit suicide. While it is true that gun violence may occur due to countless motives, this claim is too broad to be definite, showing signs of fallacy of ambiguity. Additionally, this claim does not seem to really support her main claim. With her evidence provided, it can only be said that gun violence comes from many sources, but it does not really support anything about how increasing gun control regulation will fail to accomplish its goals. But there's no arguing that there are many ways that gun violence could happen, but this information is kind of irrelevant to the point where counterclaims are not necessary. Yadira then talks about her second claim where sociopaths will find ways to find guns regardless of bans. She supports her secondary claim with the website Procon, and this immediately creates room for debate as where her claim was listed or her evidence, there was already a prepared rebuttal. Although this assures that the website is not biased, it still weakens the overall claim as the source itself argues against it. With her use of the website, it can be said that she is evading the facts. She only mentioned information that supported her claims while not addressing its counterparts. It's evident that humans are ultimately the main reason for killing. While her information does seem to prove that banning guns from the country and from the community does not really reduce gun violence, she fails to realize that there are other means of gun control other than banning guns. An article written by Cliff Notes states how proactive arrests made by police officers on patrol in gun crime and hotspots using traffic enforcement and field interrogation for carrying concealed weapons to substantially reduce gun crime in Kansas City in the mid-1990s. While taking away guns from the community may not reduce gun violence, this quote suggests that adding regulations through the means of directing law enforcement to take more participation in fighting crime greatly assisted in reducing gun violence. She rounds off her argument discussing how background checks would fail because of the lack of access to private information. I cannot really say much about this evidence because she did not really provide a source for this claim. She just discusses how mental health records are meant to be kept private, and that is subjective, and it does not really support her claims. Also, she does not say anything about how background checks affect violence statistically. Okay, so because this claim was not supported by evidence, I argue that she is accepting defeat to ignorance. Without evidence, she is relying that her opponents do not have the ability to disprove her. Although it is true that legal background checks do not apply to the criminal world and will not completely remove gun violence, it will prevent people from society from wrongfully gaining firearms legally, thus reducing the chances of mass shootings. An article written by Every Town states that background checks are a systematic way to keep guns out of the hands of people with dangerous histories. Since the system was established, background checks have blocked over 3 million sales to people with felony convictions, domestic abusers, fugitives, and other people prohibited by law from having guns. Overall, Yadira's speech succeeded in regards to bringing forth 3 claims, but however, her arguments were flawed as the claims had multiple instances where they were not relevant or well supported. Thank you.
All right. right, well, you ID the first claim pretty clearly. You're challenging it on the basis of the evidence suggesting suicides are more important than homicides. I'm not exactly sure how that works to minimize her claim, and I don't think it does much for you to point that out. So in the long run, that's a little problematic. You suggest that the issue is ambiguous, but you don't clearly explain why it is ambiguous. There was a good charge or challenge on the lack of link between gun control and the violence issue, and I thought that that was okay. It would be nice if you had some examples, for instance, where there had in fact been some kind of impact. On the second part, the second issue, you know, the first thing that you go after is the evidence. Procon.org, I don't know if I've mentioned it before, it's an aggregate site which basically lists what arguments are. Sometimes they provide you with links to sources of evidence, but it's not a source in and of itself. In other words, it's just like if you were writing a paper summarizing what the arguments on each side and put it online. That's what procon.org is. And you know, quoting somebody's analysis of what the arguments is not really proof of the argument. You know, it's a little circular there. So I think that you've got the right argument there, especially when you, I don't know why though you didn't bother presenting the counter argument since you said it was right there. That was a little bit odd. The example about increased enforcement I think is an interesting one, that there are other ways to get these results, and I like the evidence that you had on that. I was a little concerned on the third point because it sounded like you were just going to bail on it. You did bail on the mental health part of it. I do think there are some ways, for instance, that people are likely to be aware of mental health issues, especially if people have come in contact with the judicial system as part of their mental health issues. There would be a way to have access to that. There's no privacy for those court records. People would be able to have that kind of thing. But that might not be all of the folks that have these mental health issues, but it might be some of them. I was happy at the end when you finally did present some information that suggested background checks have had some success in restricting access to guns to some people. All right. Thank you.